In 1995, I was standing in a bathroom staring into a mirror. It was Halloween. My friends, at least that's what I thought they were, had locked me inside and wouldn't let me out until I said a name 5 times. Candyman, 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 Candyman. Nothing happened. I laughed it off, convinced it was just a silly urban legend. But lately I've been wondering, why do we do this? This isn't just a Halloween dare. Nearly every culture on Earth warns against speaking certain names. And if so many people across so many different times and places have feared the power of names, could they be onto something? And could your name, the one that you use every day, hold more power than you think? Welcome to the Mysteries of Mythology, the hidden power of names. Think about the last time you named something: a pet, a project, a new gaming character, maybe even a child. That moment felt significant, didn't it? Like you were doing something more than just picking a word. Like you were shaping something. That's because on some level you were. Across the ancient world, names weren't just labels. They were forces of creation. In Babylon, the Enuma Elish, their creation epic, opens with these words: "When in the height heaven was not named, and the earth beneath did not yet bear a name. When of the gods none had been called into being, and none bore a name." Not when they didn't exist, but when they had no names. Because for Babylonians, existence and naming were the same thing. Nothing truly existed until it had a name. The Egyptians believed in a god named Ptah, the god of craftsmen, sculptors and builders. But he didn't sculpt the world, he spoke it into being. Each word from his lips became reality. Each name was like a chisel carving the universe into shape. In a way, every parent naming their child is doing the same thing. We don't just pick names, we imagine futures. And even today, science tells us it isn't just a metaphor. Studies show that names affect how we're perceived and even who we become. A UC Irvine-led study found that strangers with easy-to-pronounce names were judged as more familiar, trustworthy, and safer compared to those with difficult-to-pronounce names. A 2004 study published in the American Economic Review revealed that job applicants with typically white-sounding names received 50% more callbacks for interviews compared to applicants with traditionally African-American sounding names, despite identical resumes. Interestingly, there's evidence suggesting that names might influence career and city choices. Research has shown a phenomenon called nominative determinism. This suggests that people tend to gravitate towards careers or cities that fit their name. So, Joys are likely to become a psychologist, and Lauras are more likely to live in Los Angeles. So when parents agonize over picking the right name, maybe, just maybe, they're shaping something bigger than they realize. And we still understand this intuitively, even in modern life. Companies spend millions testing the perfect name for a product because they know, just like the ancients did, that names shape how we see things. Would you buy a drink called carbonated brown liquid? Would Google be as powerful if it was still called backrub? Even outside of business, we protect and reshape our names constantly. Usernames and online identities are a way to define ourselves digitally. Nicknames and stage names exist because names influence how we're perceived. So maybe our ancestors weren't being superstitious. Maybe they understood something we're just beginning to rediscover. Naming isn't just about words. It's about power. It's about creation. And if names can create reality, what happens when they're used to control it? If names can create reality, then what happens when someone else controls your name? Because across history, knowing a true name has been the ultimate power move. Take Ra, the Egyptian sun god, supreme ruler, the all-seeing eye, the one who made the world. And yet, he was tricked by his great-granddaughter, Isis. Isis wasn't just any goddess. She wanted power over the cosmos itself. But Ra was too powerful to defeat in battle, so she used his own power against him. She created a serpent formed from Ra's own spit and clay. One bite, one wound, and for the first time in an eternity, the sun god was dying. He called for help, and the other gods rushed to his side, but no magic, no divine medicine could cure him. Only one thing could. Isis leaned in and whispered, "Tell me your true name, Ra, and I will save you." After fighting the pain, after refusing for as long as he could, Ra gave in. He whispered his name to Isis. And the moment she knew it, she had power over him. Because in Egyptian belief, to know someone's true name was to own a part of their very being. And that belief wasn't just Egyptian, it's everywhere. According to the legend, King Solomon didn't just rule over men, he also ruled over spirits. He commanded 72 demons to build his temple with a magical ring, bending them to his will. How? He knew their true names, and with that knowledge, he held absolute power over them. In Norse mythology, Odin the All-Father didn't just seek wisdom, he sought the power of names. According to legend, the runes, the sacred letters of magic, held the true names of things, and with them, the ability to shape fate itself. But the runes didn't come freely. Odin sacrificed himself, hanging from the world tree Yggdrasil for 9 days and nights, pierced by his own spear. Only through suffering and sacrifice did the runes reveal their secrets to him. By learning the true names of things, Odin gained the power to heal, curse, control the winds, and even raise the dead. Throughout medieval Europe, grimoires, ancient books of magic held detailed instructions on the power of names. These texts claimed that speaking a spirit's name exactly right could summon it, bind it, or even force it into servitude. But one wrong syllable, that could bring something far worse. And this didn't just apply to gods and demons, it applied to people too. In Celtic folklore, people refused to say the names of the fair folk, the ones we now call fairies. Not because they didn't respect them or because they wanted to control them, but because saying their name might make them notice you. So instead they used code names like the good people, the fair folk, the hidden ones. Because if you don't name something, maybe it won't notice you. And that's not just an old belief, it still happens today. Just think of He Who Must Not Be Named. Sure, Voldemort is a fictional villain, but Rowling didn't invent the idea, she tapped into something ancient. Because when you refuse to say a name, you give it power. You turn it into something bigger than words. Cornish miners used to talk about Tommyknockers, spirits of the mines. Norse people whispered about Huldufólk, the hidden folk. So if names have a power to create and to command gods, demons and people, what happens when they can be used to curse? Some names create, some names command, and some names destroy. Not a weapon, not a spell, not even a threat, just a word. Because across history, people have feared that some names don't just describe, they curse. Many people have heard of Persephone, queen of the underworld, but only a few know her name means bringer of destruction. In ancient Greece, people didn't say her name casually. Instead, they called her Gore, the maiden, because to say Persephone's name was to invite her attention, and if she looked your way, you might find yourself joining her. The Mesopotamians didn't just whisper names, they weaponized them. Archaeologists have found curse tablets from Sumerian and Akkadian cultures, slabs of clay or metal etched with names. The idea was simple. Write down your enemy's name, bury it underground, and let the gods take care of the rest. This tradition lasted through centuries and cultures, becoming popular in Greco-Roman empires with over 1,600 curse tablets found to date. The Egyptians took it further. They had extrication texts, ritual curses where they wrote an enemy's name on a pot and then shattered it. To destroy the name was to destroy the person. And they weren't entirely wrong, because names can ruin people even today. In theatre, saying the name Macbeth inside a playhouse is considered a curse. Actors avoid it, referring to it as the Scottish play. It's been blamed for accidents, injuries, even deaths. And while that sounds ridiculous, what if it's not about the name itself? What if it's about the belief? Studies show that words associated with strong emotions trigger the brain differently. A name tied to trauma, fear, or hatred can physically affect us. Our heart rate spike when we hear the name of someone who hurt us. Avoiding some names can reduce stress, which is why many cultures have superstitions about never speaking the names of the dead. Saying a feared name out loud like Bloody Mary or Candyman triggers an automatic sense of unease, even when we know nothing will happen. Perhaps a little more disturbing than that is that some names don't just carry curses. Some names listen. In Mesopotamian demonology, the goddess Ereshkigal, ruler of the underworld, had a rule: speak my name at night, and I will hear you. Not because saying her name would summon her, but because at night she was already listening. Have you ever said someone's name in a conversation and suddenly they text you? Ever thought of someone and then they call you? It feels like their name reached out and pulled them towards you. And maybe that's why our ancestors feared cursed names so much. And if names can shape reality, command spirits, and summon monsters, then how do you protect your name? If names can create, command, and curse, then how do you protect your name? In ancient China, parents give their newborns milk names, small, unimpressive names like Little Piggy or Stinky. Why? Because evil spirits were believed to target children with valuable names. A weak-sounding name was like camouflage, making the child seem unimportant and therefore not worth taking. The Dene, what used to be called the Navajo people, did something similar. A person's true name was sacred, only spoken in ceremonies or by a trusted family. In daily life, nicknames were used instead, because if an enemy, or worse, a spirit, learned your real name, they could use it against you. And we still do this today. Think about it. We hide our names online behind usernames and aliases. We don't always go by our full names because we know, on some level, that a name is a form of control. Even middle names follow this logic. How many people do you know who rarely share their middle names? Maybe it's because deep down we understand that keeping part of our names private keeps part of ourselves safe. The Norse people had another way of protecting names. They used kennings, poetic nicknames that distinguished the true meaning of the word. Instead of saying the sea, they'd say the whale road. Instead of saying blood, they would say wound dew. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs had hidden royal names known only to the gods to protect them from enemies. In Rome, defeated generals were given damnato memoriae, their names erased from history as if they never existed. Because controlling your name is controlling your own identity. And maybe that's what our ancestors understood all along. You've seen names create worlds. You've seen names command the kings and demons. You've seen names curse those who speak them. But what about your name? Your name isn't just what people call you. It's what they remember. It's what they give power to. It's what you choose to keep or leave behind. Because, in the end, a name isn't just a word. It's a choice. So the real question is, what does your name mean?